All right. EMILMS.FM Gov IS 1190 Curriculum 1. IS 1190 is the National Oil Hazard Substance Pollution Contingency Plan and System. Our National Oil Hazard Substance Pollution Contingency Plan and National Response System. This is the overview by FEMA. Welcome to the National Oil Hazard Substance Pollution Contingency Plan National Response System Independent Study course. This course is based on the needs of sustained with a national outreach campaign with the National Response System stakeholders, array with the environmental emergency management, public health, elected appointed officials who may become involved with the planning response activities of environmental incidents. This course seeks to create a broader understanding of the National Contingency Plan National Response System and how they align with the National Response Framework for the Stafford Act to support environmental incident planning response. Course goal. The goal of the course is to educate stakeholders of the large audience planning with a response with environmental incidents, to examine the difference for the not commonly known understand with the National Contingency Plan or National Response Plan with the National Response Framework Stafford Act. Course objectives. Upon completion of this course, you will be able to describe the regulatory frameworks of the federal doctrine that guide planning or respond with recovery environmental incidents, identify planning prepared activities associated with the incident, implementation national contingency plan prepared with the response and environmental incident, explain similar differences between the national contingency plan and national response framework response to environmental incidents, and 4, describe environmental incident damage assessment and restoration processes. Alright, same features to show the drop-down menu of the course, the glossary to look over the definition, review guidance, troubleshoot, advise, help button, plug-in button for the downloadable plugins, move forward and backward from previous screens. Navigation use for the keyboard, shift tabs, and receiving credit. Students may complete the course, the entire course path of the final exam, receive the credit for the course. Each lesson will take the amount of time to complete a variable amount of time. If you are unable to complete the course entirely, you may close the window or reopen the course at any time. However, depending on the system and to take the course, it's probably you may have to repeat a portion of the last session you were studying. Alright, Lesson 1. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to list the authorities that lead with the creation of the National Oil Hazard Substance Pollution Contingency Plan. Describe the National Contingency Plan and how it fits in the response mission area of the Presidential Directive 8. President Policy Directive Number 8. Describe principal coordinating structure for the National Response Framework, developing or delivering core capabilities required to plan and respond to recovery environmental incidents. First, the National Contingency Plan. The patchwork of the United States with the law regulation pertaining to the oil spill hazard substance response initiated with a response major oil spills, significant chemical incidents including the Torrey Canyon, Exxon Valdez oil spills. In 1967, the more than 37 million gallons of crude oil spilled with the waters coast of England after the oil tanker Torrey Canyon ran aground. Thousands of the birds died. Pristine beaches were oiled. There was significant economic impact, but the response was rebuked for coordination problems such as no clear lines of authority, no response plan, no overall strategy. To avoid the problem faced with the response officials involved with the incident, the United States developed and published the first National Contingency Plan in 1968. The version of the National Contingency Plan provided with a coordinated plan with a response to oil spill hazard substance releases. Even though a version of the National Contingency Plan was in place at the time of 10.8 million gallon Exxon Valdez oil spill, Principal William Sound, Alaska, Congress responded to the spill passing Oil Pollution Act of 1990. Oil Pollution Act of 1990, herein referred to as OPA or Oil Protection Act. Oil Protection Act significantly increased requirements of the oil spill prevention, pollution, and prevention response and provided with a robust federal response to oil spills. Authorities of the National Contingency Plan. While the initial 1968 was issued with the President Johnson direction rather than the law, Congress did eventually pass a series of laws adapted to the National Contingency Plan concept of the legislation broadened the scope of the National Contingency Plan. The laws provided statutory authority with today's National Contingency Plan. These laws are Section 311 of the Clean Water Act as amended with the Oil Pollution Act, Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act, uh, which is better known as Superfunded laws as amended with the Superfunded Amendment Reauthorization Act. Clean Water Act of 311, Title 33 U.S. Senate Code 1321, as amended by the Oil Pollution Act, respond to the discharge substantial threat discharged into and onto navigable waters, shorelines, exclusive economic zones, certain ocean waters affecting U.S. natural resources of oil-listed CWAs and Clean Water Act. Hazardous substance polluter pays the enforcement authorities' planning process. Your Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act, also known as Superfund Amendment Reauthorization Act, release a substantial threat release to the environment, includes land, air, water, listed as Comprehensive Emergency Response Compensation Liability Act. Hazardous substance pollutants, contaminants that may impose imminent substance endangerment, public health, welfare. Petroleum and natural gas are not included. Additional exclusions may include polluter pays enforcement authorities planning preparedness. This goes to the National Oil Hazardous Substance Pollution Contingency Plan Regulation Title 40 CFR Part 300 that implements oil hazardous substance plans authorities and these laws. Authority of the National Contingency Plan. In general, the purpose of the law is the relief of the threat and releases of the environment of the oil, other hazardous substances in order to protect public health, welfare, and environment. The Clean Water Act, Oil Pollution Act addresses the authorities regarding the oil with the Comprehensive Emergency Response Compensation and Liability Act addresses the authorities regarding the hazardous substances, including oil. Clean Water Act, Oil Pollution Act covers the certain hazardous substances, but in place Comprehensive Emergency Response Compensation Liability Act is usually used to address the substances. Comprehensive Emergency Response Liability Act is broadened by the Oil Pollution Act and the address relief of the environmental general, which would be in land, water, and air. Comprehensive Emergency Response Compensation Liability Act allows for federal response to other pollutant contaminants that are not specifically listed in federal regulations but in thresholds, and responding to the substances higher, there must be an imminent and substantial endangerment to public health and welfare. Both laws give federal government enforcement authorities over parties responsible for spills, require polluters to pay cleanup. Both laws and planning preparedness components and establish trust funds that can pay the federal response and some other costs when needed. Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act established two programs: the Cleanup Hazardous Waste Site Removal Program, which allows quick response, and remedial program targeted at long-term, oft more complex cleanups. Implementation regulations for these statutes are found in the National Contingency Plan. Alright, Comprehensive Emergency Response Compensation Liability Act, Clean Water Act, Oil Pollution Act, Enforcement Authorities. Both Comprehensive Emergency Response Compensation Liability Act, Clean Water Act, Oil Pollution Act promote identification responsibility part of the incentive to provide federal government authority to make either party to clean up the spill to pay with the cost for the cleanup. Identify a reasonable party perform cleanup with both by agreement and voluntary and or litigation, or pay by agreement and litigation. In some cases, the responsible party might be voluntary perform the pay of the cleanup, and other federal governments may have an order to have the perform cleanup and go and compel the perform pay for the cleanup. Under both laws, the responsible party is liable to paying the response costs as defined in each law. Under the Clean Water Oil Pollution Act, the responsible party is liable for certain types of damages, such property damage, loss of the income. Environmental Protection Agency leads with the cost for the recovery of the Comprehensive Emergency Response Compensation Liability Response. United States Coast Guard leads the cost recovery. Clean Water Oil Pollution Act responses. Under the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act, Clean Water Act, and Oil Pollution Act, the federal government can recover triple the cost under the circumstances the federal government undertakes the cleanup. In addition, both laws provide civil and criminal penalties for non-compliance with requirements specified in the Comprehensive Environmental Clean and Liability Act, Clean Water and Oil Pollution Act. Under both laws, the responsible party is liable for paying damages to the natural resource that can be required to implement national resource restoration activities managed with a separate process reviewed in more detail later. Both laws provide 3 defense liability payment: act of God, act of war, act or omission of third party, as long as there is no relationship, contractual, employee, agent between the responsible party and the third party. A few key points to keep in mind. For instance, it may not easily be possible to identify the responsible party. In some cases, reasonable responsible party may be unable to perform or pay the cleanup. They may not have technical expertise to conduct the cleanup, or may not be able to pay or perform a cleanup. And 3, the emergency situation. If the responsible party is not already adequately responding viable, the response party cannot be quickly identified, but the federal government will typically undertake federal response follow-up. The response party or responsible party identification cost recovery later. Alright, and then on the right it says each law defined with the cost of the responsible party liable for note, Comprehensive Environmental and Compensation Liability Act, respond with the cost, natural resource damage assessment and restoration. Clean Water Act, Oil Pollutant Act, respond with cost, certain damages, including natural resource damage assessment and restoration. 3 defenses are liability: act of God, act of war, act of omission, third party, no relationship. No responsible party is responsible for cleaning up the spill, paying over the response, paying for the certain damages, resolve of the spill, environmental restoration following the response. Alright, your National Oil Hazardous Substance Pollution Contingency Plan. The National Oil Hazardous Substance Pollution Contingency Plan, Title 40 CFR, Part 300, is administered by the EPA with the U.S. Coast Guard assistance from other federal departments. Agencies have the role in supporting mission. The National Contingency Plan described as the National Preparedness Response System for Oil and Hazardous Substance, includes chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or CBRN. Release to the environment, both accidental and intentional, including terrorist release. And then show the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 4 and 40, Part 300. Alright, national contingency background. Incidents involving the oil hazardous substance release for the environment is reported as the United States on a daily basis. The federal support is needed to address the commonly occur with the National Contingency Plan. Primary authority plan on federal response. The National Contingency Plan describes the organizational structure perceived with preparing and responding to oil hazards and substance incidents. The system is called the National Response System. National Contingency Plan applied with the incident involved with the potential actual discharge of oil, Clean Water Act, Oil Pollution Act, relief of the hazardous substance, pollutant, contaminant, including biohazards, radiological contamination, per Comprehensive Environmental Compensation Liability Act. Many federal agencies respond with a public agency with emergency response plan. A few codified in a regulation have the force of law, but the National Contingency Plan is unique in that regard. Alright, your National Prepared System defined with the President Policy Directive 8. President Policy Directive 8 is a presidential policy directive signed by President Barack Obama in 2011. Created comprehensive system planning documents describe the guide of how the nation manages emergency incidents. National preparedness goal describe 5 mission areas: prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery, and 32 core capabilities for the draft of the greater risk of the nation. Agencies have various roles responsibility under President Policy Directive 8 framework. Following slides describe the comprehensive national preparedness system established the Presidential Policy Directive 8, how the national contingency fits into the system. Shows the national presidency goals: prevention, protection, response, recovery, mitigation, federal interagency operations, and planning. Same thing, prevention policy, response, recovery, mitigation, incident acts, and incident annexes. Alright, your National Response Framework. The National Response Framework guide responds to all the type of the disaster emergency that describe the principal role of the responsibility, coordinating, structure, delivery with the core capabilities required for the response of the incident. Elements of the National Response Framework can be implemented at any time, any law, at any time, according to the unique need of the capability, circumstance of the jurisdiction where incidents occur. Our National Response Framework coordination federal incident response established through the emergency support functions. Emergency support functions bring together the capability of the federal department agency, the other national asset, to work together to support an effective response. Your Oil Chemical Incident Annex. The Annex support will provide the hazard support supplement information response federal Interagency Operation Plan. The Recovery Federal Interagency Operation Plan describe the process of the organizational constructs that will be utilized federal department agencies responding to threats incident with causing oil spill, chemical releases, or oil chemical, whether result of deliberate act of terrorism, crime, accidents, natural disaster. The annex provides the process construction utilize the national response system and procedures within the large framework of the national response framework. It also describes federal interagency partnerships will respond, transition, and recover the oil chemical incidents with the federal authorities, lead role support, state, local, tribal, and ancillary area governments. The ESF, let's go back one. Your ESF, Emergency Support Functions. Emergency Support Function number 10, Oil Hazard Material Response. Emergency Support Function number 10 provides federal support respond to the actual potential discharge release of oil hazardous material. Led by the Environmental Protection Agency, the Emergency Support Field Emergency Support Forces number 10 resources activated with the FEMA under Stafford Act reviewed on the next slide. Respond with under request for the federal agency mutual aid. Federal response to oil hazard material incidents can also further fall under the National Contingency Plan. This can occur under the Stafford Act response in conjunction with and separate from Stafford Act response. For details, function emergency support functions number 10 can be found at ESF number 10 Annex. Alright, the Stafford Act. Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief Act provides federal resources for the funding to support the response recovery of disaster emergencies. And state, local, tribal anticipate the resources that may be exceeded during response with the governor, tribal, chief executive may request federal assistance from the Stafford Act declaration. Before the declaration was made, the state and tribal emergency plan must be activated and all appropriate state, local, tribal actions must have been taken and initiated. Under the National Response Framework, federal assistance may be requested in the Stafford Act declaration through individual authorities funding federal departments of agencies through mutual aid agreements. The National Contingency Plan provides one such framework. For example, local tribal governments can request assistance directly from the EPA and U.S. Coast Guard under the Comprehensive Response Compensation Liability Act. Note, under the Stafford Act, tribes directly request their own emergency declaration, major disaster declaration, or they can request assistance under state requests. Or the National Contingency Plan, National Response System. Starting from the left, starting from the middle, National Response Framework. National response to all hazard emergency, national disaster, terrorist attacks, oil, chemical incident, public health, and emergency. Federal government response may be led by the various federal agencies under federal authorities, including EPA, U.S. Coast Guard, and other than the National Contingency Plan, FEMA under the Stafford Act. And then the Stafford Act is a FEMA coordinated cover of federal response, 15 emergency support functions of FEMA, and each emergency support function led by the federal agency that coordinate multiple agencies who provide certain type of federal support under FEMA issued mission assignments. Emergency support fund, emergency support function led by EPA together with the U.S. Coast Guard National Response Team, National Agency for the National Response System, structure to provide environmental response to oil hazard issue, and that goes back to the National Response System, the National Contingency Plan, EPA, U.S. Coast Guard, National Contingency Plan, Hazard Substance Response, National Contingency Plan, supplement the National Response Framework, serve the Federal Interagency Operation Plan, Oil Hazard Substance Response. For federal government, the National Response Framework recognize the federal response that may be led with the various federal agencies under the various federal law authorities, including responsibilities of oil hazard substance incident of the EPA, U.S. Coast Guard under the National Contingency Plan, described previously with the National Contingency Plan, serve the Federal Interagency Operation Plan, Oil Hazard Substance Response. The National Response Framework also recognizes FEMA may coordinate with federal response with the Stafford Act. In this case, the National Response may have the role played with the provide with the FEMA support from FEMA with the emergency activations, emergency support function number 10, oil hazard material response. FEMA coordinated with the federal response under the Stafford Act. FEMA has supported broad spectrum federal agencies who support organized emergency support functions. Each provide a different type of the federal support, but during the incident emergency support functions led by federal agencies must expertise. Authority providing type of the support may leave the agency support with other federal agencies that also have the authority expertise in all areas. As led agency for the emergency support function, number 10, EPA leverages resource capability, expertise, federal member agencies involved with the national resource system, playing responsibility to provide with the emergency support function. Function number 10, response. Emergency support function number 10 usually is activated multiple times each year in national disaster and result oil hazard something released in such as Hurricane Sandy, Katrina. The difference between the National Contingency Plan and the Emergency Support Function of the number 10 Stafford Act response. Under Stafford Act, state and tribes ask FEMA to specify the types of the federal help they need. FEMA then activates the Emergency Support Function that provide the support with the issuing mission agreements with the task emergency support function due to the specific work requested. FEMA then reimburses for the emergency support function assigned the agency Stafford Act Disaster Fund. Emergency support function number 10 is activated. The function number 10 is activated. The federal government responds with a specific task assigned by FEMA mission assigning request state and territorial tribe. Regardless of circumstances, the EPA, U.S. Coast Guard still maintain the ability to exercise the independent National Contingency Plan authorities in need during the Stafford Act response. So it's possible to have both emergency support function number 10 and National Contingency Plan response Stafford Act incidents. However, the National Contingency Plan response, federal government can respond to release without specific request for the state and tribe, and does not need to wait for specific tasks to be assigned from FEMA. The Emergency Support Function number 10, Ncp of the National Contingency Plan authorities. The National Contingency Plan addresses the federal authority with the removal of the remedial response of the National Response Framework, generally addresses the oil hazard materials and incidents that consider removal of response. Federal National Contingency Plan removal authorities differ from the Stafford Act authorities of that per National Contingency Plan. The federal government makes an independent evaluation for the need of federal response rather than waiting for the local, state, and the tribal, territorial, insular government requests. Requests for federal assistance from local, state, and tribal governments do not have to be made with the level of the governor. Federal government may, and in some circumstances, must lead with the response. Federal government has a tactical on-scene command authorities. Federal government has enforcement authorities over the party's response to oil discharge hazardous substance release. Federal government has the authority on federal as well as non-federal land. Under emergency support function number 10, authorities can include response to household hazardous waste. Alright, what type of National Contingency Plan choose the best answer? And that would be oil hazardous substance. Check. Answer is correct. With the authority of what led the authority of the National Contingency Plan? Oh, we got that one wrong. It was the actually Clean Water Operational Plan. Under the National Response Framework, how is the federal incident response coordinated? Who can make a request assistance under State Stafford Act? Okay, we got those questions wrong. Our Lesson 1 summary. In this lesson, you have learned the authority of the National Contingency Plan. National Contingency Plan Comprehensive System establishes President Policy Directive Number 8. National Response Framework, Stafford Act, Emergency Support Field, Emergency Support Field, Emergency Support Function Number 10, National Contingency Plan Authorities. How the National Contingency Plan fits in the system and establishes policy, President Policy Directive Number 8. And Lesson 1 objective the review. At the end of this lesson, you'll be able to list the authorities led with the creation of the National Contingency Plan, describe the National Contingency Plan, how it fits into the response mission area of the President Policy Directive, Describe the principal coordinating structures under the National Response Framework for delivering core capabilities required plan. Respond to it, recover environmental incidents. Lesson 2 Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe the National Response System and throw over the responsible oil hazardous substance preparedness response at all levels of government. Define oil hazardous substance and spill. List the key of the National Response System components. Identify plans associated with the implement of the National Contingency Plan. Describe exercise activities associated with preparing oil and hazardous substance spills. National Response System. The National Contingency Plan actions carried out through the National Response System, which organizes network, agency, programs, resource authority with the responsible oil, hazardous substance, prepared and response at all levels of the government. The National Response System provides coordinated response with real potential oil hazardous substance incident. The National Response System functions through network, interagency, intergovernmental, private sector relations plan. National response plan is divided in local, regional, national, organizational level. The participating include federal, state, local, tribal, local, private sector agency, organization interested in responsibility oil has with interest or responsibility in oil hazard substance emergency. Federal agency, the National Response System provides on-site response capability at a local level. Primary response for the National Response System to be able to provide federal response resources at an on-site level. The National Response System provides important safety net that can support state and local response activities. Definition of oil hazardous substance spill. Oil is defined any kind of in any form, including petroleum, fuel, oil, sludge, oil refuse, oil mixed with waste other than dread spoil that does not include the substance for the specified list of the designated with the hazardous substance under subparagraph A through F of the section 101.14 of Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act, Title 42 U.S. Standard Code 9601. Hazardous substances defined as element compounds which discharge in quantity into and upon navigable waters of the United States adjoining shorelines, the waters contingency zone under the executive exclusive management authority of the United States, present imminent substantial danger to the public health welfare, including not limited to fish, shellfish, wildlife, shoreline, beaches. Term does not include petroleum, crude oil, natural gas, and liquids, and liquefied natural gas, synthetic gas, usable for fuel, mixture of the natural gas or synthetic gas. Torrey Canyon oil spill. The first National Contingency Plan covered the National Multi-Agency Oil Hazard Military Materials Contingency Plan in 1968 was developed and published in response to a massive oil spill with the oil tanker Torrey Canyon off the coast of England. More than 37 million gallons of crude oil spilled into the water, eventually washed offshore over the English and French beaches, causing massive environmental economic damage concerning the public health. To address the problem, the responsible official involved with the incident of the President Lyndon B. Johnson direction of the U.S. developed the coordinated approach to cope the potential spills in U.S. water. With the 1968 plan applicable to the oil spill in navigable waters, U.S. provided with the first comprehensive national system oil spill reporting response. Through the original National Contingency Plan was just a federal plan, not a regulation, and was not developed under a legislative mandate. Alright, the oil response landscape. Largely transportation from the pose of the greatest risk. It's largely transportation that pose of the greatest risk to accidental oil spill with the energy section. Any sector of the transport of the enormous quantity of the oil and other fossil fuels. With recent domestic production and energy renaissance, the risk of the change with the responsible community adapting to those change. For example, transportation, rail, and pipeline have increased dramatically. New products have entered the market, including high voltage shale oil, as a result of the numerous explosive accidents like the devastating train derailment that destroyed downtown Lac Mégantic, Quebec in 2013, killing 40 people and destroying 30 buildings. Non-floating oils with diluted bitumen, examples from the asbestos oil sands, pose new response channel with the control environmental devastating spills. For example, pipeline rupture 2010 spilled estimated 1 million gallons diluted bitumen in a tributary Kalamazoo River in Michigan at cleanup costs over $750 million, penalties of $177 million. In fiscal year 2019, more than 16,000 oil spills were reported to the National Response Center. Alright, hazardous substance landscape. In the contrary of the reported oil spill, which most commonly associated with the transportation hazardous substance relief, the most frequently reported with the fixed manufacturing, other type of the product of the facility slideshow with some of the facility in the U.S. that manage hazardous substance with the clean air requires facility to manage the certain hazardous chemical within quantities above the certain amount, but they have plans of the managing chemical safety in order to prevent accidental release. The the slideshow of the type of the number of the facility that come under the Clean Air Act of the requirement provided. The example of the range of facilities could cause hazardous substance release. There are 660 additional Clean Air Act and risk management plans for the required facilities that do not fall into any category listed on the slide. In a recent example of significant chemical release West fertilizer, the company ammonium nitrate explosion in 2013. The explosion killed 15 people, injured 160 people, damaged and destroyed 150 buildings. In the fiscal year 2019, over 8,300 relief of the hazardous substances and other non-oil pollutants were reported in the National Spills Center. The top 15 most frequently reported release of non-oil product materials: unknown material, natural gas, ammonia hydrate, sewage, refrigerant gases, ethanol, glycol, benzene, oxide, nitrogen, carbon monoxide, polychloride, biethanol, sulfuric acid, raw sewage, hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, paint, chlorine, butanide, and drilling brine with dine salts. And then it shows the facilities, agricultural, energy, food, beverage, chemical, and wastewater reported releases. Key national response system component of the primary entity of the national response system are National Response Center, Federal On-Scene Corps, National Regional Response Team, National Response Team, areas committees, State Emergency Response Commission, state local governments, Tribal Emergency Response Commission, local emergency planning committees, National Response System special teams, joint response teams in neighboring countries, regulated industries. All right, note the National Response Team, National Response Team and the Regional Response Team work in Canada, Mexico, Cuba, coordinate the response to have the cross-border impacts, have developed joint contingency plan with those countries as well as Russia. There's also multilateral agreement with the Arctic nations, Caribbean nations, Ocean Pacific and the island countries and territories. Our National Response Center. The National Response Center should for the notification core of the National Response System is located with the U.S. Coast Guard headquarters staff 24/7. The National Response Center received the reports of oil hazard substance release and triggered federal notification requirements, including the relay with the infrastructure, security breaches, suspicious activities, terrorist-related events. Approximately 30,000 incident notifications each year. For oil, the notification trigger is a submittal of the result of the visible sheen. For hazard substance, the notification trigger varies by substance. National Response Center watches officers generate reports, relay them appropriately on scene, and coordinate the U.S. Coast Guard, Captain Port Commands, EPA regional offices, and to state emergency response commissions. National Response System family plans. National Response System provides framework coordination with the federal, state, tribal, local respondent with the responsible party that respond effectively on scene to oil discharge release hazardous substance for the accidental deliberate of the coordinated planning requires integrating elements of the host, federal, state statutes, implementing regulation different purposes. National Response System accomplishes through development and maintenance family layered interlocking contingency plans are required on the National Response System. Authorities are shown here in solid lines. These plans are required under regulation consistent. Family plans include multi-level to provide an integrated approach to corresponding oil hazard substance incident. The Area Contingency Plan, or ACP, is center of the solar system of plans. The Area Contingency Plan is associated with the Area Committee with the agency industry relationship and nurtured through industrial reps are not members of area committees. Industrial plans which must be compatible with the Area Contingency Plans that are integral components of the National Response System. The National Contingency Plan provides unique responsibility for the entities responsible for the spill, referred to as responsible party. The Family Oil Hazard Substance Plan integrates with and supports the National Response Framework. All right, so the So have your international joint plans, national contingency plan, national response framework, regional contingency plan, areas of contingency plan, federal agency internal plans, state local plans, facility response plan, vessel response plans. Alright, National Response Plan groups. Illustrate for the National Response Plan with associated with the plan groups, each timely and intricately connected, fitting together interconnected layers of blocks. National Response Plan, National Contingency Plan in black, National Response Team planning groups, Regional Contingency Plan, Regional Response Team, Area Contingency Plan, Area Committees, Local and Emergency Committee plans with industrial plans, show for the state emergency, tribal emergency, local emergency, and industry. Regional Contingency Plan, National Contingency Plan, Regional Contingency Plan, Coastal Area Contingency Plan with the FRPs on offshore, onshore pipeline mobile tracking, vessel response plan, inland area connection, inland, onshore pipeline, mobile rail truck, offshore, certain types. A regional contingency plan are maintained with the regional response team, provide effective regional response coordination. Regional contingency plans show the clear roles responsible to provide common elements of local area planning with each of the region following the North National Contingency Plan format. There are 13 regional contingency plans, one for each regional response team. 10 EPA region of the ocean, Caribbean, and Alaska. Regional contingency plan covers both inland and coastal zones, includes information, government, commercial, academic facility resources in each region, coordinated with the Area Contingency Plan, State Emergency Commission, Tribal Emergency Commission, and Local Emergency Commission plans. Designated boundary between the coastal inland zone. Include appropriate pre-authorization plan used to disperse and other spill control agents listed within the National Contingency Plan, product schedules, and burning agents into burning operations. Note, the Regional Contingency Plan may be found in the Regional Response Team website using the Regional Response Team map. Area Contingency Plan, National Contingency Plan, Regional Contingency Plan, Coastal Area Contingency Plan, Inland Area Contingency Plan, Offshore, Onshore Pipeline, Mobile Rail Track Response Plan, Inland Offshore Pipeline Rail, Mobile Rail, Offshore, and certain types. Develop an area community with the federal on-scene coordinated with the federal and state local agency for the responsible for developing an area contingency plan. Areas responsible may include several local planning districts, parts of such districts. Provide effective response coordination, worst charge, case charge, discharge. There are 36 area coastal contingency plans with 13 area contingency inland area contingency plan. In addition, with the area contingency plan contains special plans such as response protocol, pre-authorization to spur and other alternative countermeasure, firefighting, placing refuge, wildfire response, use of volunteers. Area contingency plan contains information, geographic area cover the plan, responsible public and private entities, procedure obtaining expedited decision regarding use of chemical, biological countermeasures, how to plan and integrate with the area contingency plan, response plan, booming strategies, equipment available in fishing, wildlife sensitive area, environment annexes. State and territorial, tribal, local preparedness, emergency plan, community right to know act, and the super amended refund authorization act and 3. Purpose to help communities prepare chemical emergencies. Emergency Plan Compensate Community Right to Know Act of 1986 with the Comprehensive Environmental Compensation Liability Act. It was passed as toxic gas leak from a chemical plant with a tank with a by Hope of the India killed about 38,000 people, injured many others. Incident raised concern with the adequacy state of the local planning with the incident and magnitude of the U.S. Resulted in the state emergency, tribal emergency, over on 2,000 local emergency plan commission that are integral points of the national responses from the state emergency response commission appointed by the governor of each state. State emergency response commission designates emergency planning district appoint local emergency planning commission, supervises and coordinates the activity, review the local emergency response plan. Chief of the executive office of the tribe appoints the tribal emergency response commission. Tribal emergency response commission have the same responsibility as state emergency response commission. Each local emergency planning commission prepares the local emergency response plan for the community. Establishes procedure for the receiving the process request for the public information generated required for the Title III reporting requirements. requires the development of a local emergency response plan for the responding relief of extremely hazardous substances under the National Contingency Plan, Regional Contingency Plan, and Area Contingency Plan are integrated with the state and local plans. Note: the State Emergency Response and the Tribal Emergency Response Commissions establish plan districts, which most of the local emergency which most then form local emergency planning commission, state emergency planning commission, tribal emergency planning commission, local emergency planning commission must perform threat assessment based on required reports to industry, the operating jurisdiction, Title Area 2 and 3 reports, and develop the plans to address those threats relative to the common practice of those plans. Consider the annexed community all hazard plans required by FEMA under some circumstances. Membership of the state emergency, tribal, and local emergency planning commissions mandate the Emergency Planning Community Right to Know Act, although many of these organizations may include other entities beside mandated members. The Environmental Emergency Plan Community Right to Know Act is also created federal government responsible parties report incident to local authorities. Additional prepared activities related to the Oil Pollution Act include the Vessel Response Plan and Facility Response Plans. Vessel Response Plan outlines vessels what it will do in case of the offshore spill with the required maritime operators which carry a certain type and quantities of hazardous substance or oil. Similar to the Vessel Response Plan, the Federal Facility Response Plan prepared measures for those facilities who store the oil and demonstrate the discharge response. Research of the State Emergency Response Commission, Local Emergency Response Commission, the Hazard Material Management Emergency Planning Guidebook, NRT 1, 2001, includes references, guidance, filming state, local emergency response plan, and brief references and legislation incorporated with emergency planning, integration, coordination. Updated version of the NRT 1 include the guidance of the integrated local emergency response plan, prepared updated local emergency planning committees, and the NOAA Cameo software suite is available to assist emergency planning response, especially for those with the related hazard chemicals. Alright, preparedness response exercise, or PrEP. Exercise, one of the primary mechanisms in validating plans, an integral part of the preparedness and preparedness response exercise program is guidebook for the Ohio partner, its agency. Co-owned 4 agencies, U.S. Coast Guard, EPA, Department of Interior, and Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, Department of Transportation, Pipeline, Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, and preparedness of the response exercise program of the Oil Pollution Act exercise requirements associated policy. Consolidated in one guidebook, the preparedness or response exercise program guidelines are addressed in 2 exercises. The facility response plan, vessel response plan, holder exercises are exercises attached to the area control area contingency plan under the emergency preparedness community right no act. Local emergency planning commission required to conduct the exercise test validate community response plan. Exercises all parts of FEMA Emergency Management Performance Grant Program. Alright, starting with the right because it's small areas, on-scene coordinator, quarterly area notification drill, annual area incident damage management team tabletop exercise, annual equipment deployment drills, and quadrennial area full-scale exercises. Facility or vessel holder exercises. Qualified individual notification exercise, remote assessment consultant exercise, salvage marine firefighting for vessels. Emergency procedures, exercising vessels, emergency procedures, exercising facility, optional incident management team exercises, shore-based salvage, shore-based marine firefighting management team exercise, vessel equipment deployment exercise, government-initiated unannounced exercises. Spill and national significance exercise or SUNS. Exercise and training plan. Led by the U.S. Coast Guard Director of Emergency Management, revised focus of the full-scale operational deployment of strategic seminars, tabletops aimed with a familiar senior level of decision-making with the National Contingency Response Doctrine, policy, interagency coordination, strategic communication challenges. Participants include National Response Team, member agency executives, and National Security Council staff, state organization. And that spill of national significance is SUNS. National level exercise is congressionally mandated post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act of 2006, required by the FEMA administrator to conduct with a biannual national exercise to test, evaluate capability, federal, state, local, tribal governments to detect, disrupt, prevent, and threaten actual catastrophic acts, Terrorism, especially involving the weapons of mass destruction, to test, evaluate, the respond with the federal, state, local, tribal governments respond, work up the coordinate of a unified manner, catastrophic incidents. National level exercise, how the federal government validates progress toward achieving the national cultural preparedness required for the prepare for the respond catastrophic events. National level exercise of the building block approach for the 2 year cycle of the culminate in full-scale exercise. All levels of government, private sector, non-government organization, community groups participate in some authority outside of the national level exercise. National level exercise scenarios include all type of hazards, including natural disaster, man-made attacks. More than 12,000 individuals participated in national level exercise 2008 across the whole community. More than 450,000 individuals participated in personal preparedness activities accountable to drills as part of the exercise. National level exercise may contain oil hazard substance exercise play, oil hazard substance following the earthquake, use of oil hazard substance exercise scenario, large refinery explosion, oil spill near a major population center infrastructure. What is the mission of the National Response System? Provide a coordinated response with real potential oil spill hazards, provide guidance to drafting, promulgating regional contingency plans, outline authorities related to oil hazards. I got that one correct. What is the function of the National Response Center? Identify areas responsible to local communities, serve the communications, allocate funding responses. Got that one correct. What are the type of the planning effective response coordinated with the National Contingency Plan format designates a boundary between coastal inland zones? And that was Regional Contingency Plan. How to prepare if efforts validated with the National Response System by U.S. Coast Guard Commandment. The National Response Center conducts annual assessment. Agency responsible area continues review plan, preparedness of response exercise program. Alright, Lesson 2 Summary. In this lesson, you have learned the National Response System, definition of oil hazard substance spill, current national contingency policy environment, National Response System components, National Response Center, National Response System plans, programs, plans and planning groups, preparedness exercise. Lesson 2 Objectives Review. At the end of the lesson, you will discover the National Response System authorities of responsible oil hazard substance preparedness response to all levels of government. Find oil hazard substance spill the list for the key National Response System components. Identify plans associated with the implemented with the National Contingency Plan. Describe exercise activities associated with preparing oil and hazard substance spills. Lesson 3, and then we're going to cut the tape there. Testing.